Welcome to our GLC Foundations class. Becoming a leader worth following requires timeless tools. And here at GLC, our Foundations class is geared towards helping our first-year students not only build their character, but also build their competencies as they enter the long game of leadership. We hope this teaching equips you.
Okay, well,
obviously her lovely husband,
this is-
strong, masculine, debonair, Mr. George in the house. The armor bearer.
he's the one that takes care of me, for sure. I'm so excited to be here, and I've been here with the groups before, and it's been fun. Just to tell you a little about me, I'm an author. I've written 10 books that have been published, and I spend a lot of my time, or most of my time, coaching aspiring writers and speakers. And so I work with people to develop their signature speech, maybe, or to just teach them the skills of speaking, and then I work with writers. And George and I also own a small press publishing company, a Christian publishing company. So we have published altogether probably close to 200 books. We're small, but we're very excited about it, and we're able to work with authors who want to get their message out. So that's, if you ever want to look it up, it's called Bold Vision Books, B-O-L-D, Bold Vision Books, and it's boldvisionbooks.com. So that's enough about me. You might know Grayson McGregor or Gabby McGregor or Garrett McGregor. They are mine. They are my babies, my grandbabies. So they're big, they're not little, but I still think of them that way. That's what grandmas do, right? Well, he's probably working. He works hard. So anyway, delighted to be here with you. What I want to give you this morning, and I'm calling it quick coaching, because there are so many parts of being a speaker that are important for you to learn. Yeah. But let me tell you one thing. It's a craft. Speaking is a craft, which, let me tell you what that means for you. It means you can learn it. So don't be afraid. It's the number one scary thing people talk about. Oh, I don't want to be in front of people. But maybe you're dying to get in front of people. But you can learn the craft of speaking. And so I really hope that we're going to go through a lot of stuff. You're going to have to really think and listen fast. But the reason I'm doing this much in this period of time, which I don't normally do or normally recommend, is because I want you to see the big picture. Okay? So let's begin. Gerald Ford, former president, said if he went back to college, the one thing he would do was study speaking and writing, because he knows that's what was the important part of his career in the rest of his life, in the rest of his career, and even becoming president. So it's important for us to study it, and it is important for us to understand what we can do to make it work for us. So let's talk about first here's the big question, what do you have to say? Or do you have anything to say? And I think that's the biggest question of all, because you might be sitting there thinking, I got nothing to say. But let me tell you something. You have the Word of God. So you have something to say. You are students of the Word of God, and there is more there than any of us will ever be able to talk about. You also are learning your skills, whatever your college is preparing you for, whether you're going into counseling or business or some other area of life. You have that information. And the other thing is that you've lived life. You haven't lived quite as long as I have. And that's the only reason I'm oldest, is because I've lived longer than you. And so it's okay, right? But look, I want you to think that all the experiences of your life will give you something to say. When you have been hurt, anybody here been hurt? Yes. Yeah, we all have. And when God has rescued you from that, when God has healed you from that, then you have something to say. Because what happened to you could help somebody else. See? Or when something fabulous has happened to you, you can express that as the blessing of God and help somebody else. Yeah. So everything that ever happens is part of your life. Not only your life, but also your parents and your grandparents and the culture you grew up in. And all of that is like fodder to feed your presentations and your work. So you do have something to say. So the answer to the question is yes. Yes. So everybody say that. Yes. Yes, I do have something to say. And that's really good. Now here comes the second question, which is just as tough, and is, does anybody need to hear it? And so I wanted to say that because, look, no matter what you've got to say, no matter how important you get, no matter how fabulous you think you are or you really are, it's all about the audience. It really is. If I can speak today and build your confidence in becoming a speaker, then that's what I want to do, because it's about you, and it's about you and each one of you. If I can, if the pastor speaks on Sunday and he gives us this beautiful oration and it's fabulous words and wonderfully put together and everything, but it doesn't touch our hearts, what good is it, right? What does it matter? And so you always take all parts of your life, all the situations in your life, and you say, how can I help somebody else with it? What is it? Here's the words that we use. It is the felt need of the audience. Now I want you to hear that, felt need. They think they need something. Maybe they think they need money. Maybe they think they need to lose weight. Maybe they need to grow taller. Maybe I don't know what it is, or maybe they think they need to impress somebody else. But felt need is one thing. That's what people feel. But then the question becomes, what do they really need? So if somebody thinks, if I just had more money, then I could do what I need to do. Well, maybe what they really need is to learn how to manage the money they have. See the difference? Yeah. A felt need and the real need. And often that real need question is answered with Jesus. They think they need happiness. What they really need is Jesus, right? And so that's what we do. And here's the other sort of industry term that we use. There is a takeaway. What is the audience going to take away from your presentation? You got it? That's the most important thing you do. I'm going to show you some techniques about how to build it and how to be on stage and all of that. But the most important question you work on when you're preparing is, what are they going to take away? What are they going to get from it? And your job is to reach the audience. All right, so we've answered those two questions, and then the next piece of the puzzle is, how do you put together that presentation once you got your idea? And I love this illustration, this picture of the Golden Gate Bridge, because that's what a presentation is. Now, if I get on this bridge in San Francisco and I go across it, I'm going to Sausalito, California. I can't go to Texas if I get on that bridge. I can't go to Ireland if I'm going on that bridge. I can only go to Sausalito. It's got one destination. That bridge is the bridge between them. And I use that illustration because I want you to know that your presentation, whatever your sermon, your presentation, your speech, whatever you want to call it, it should have one main point, one main destination. Now here's why. Because people can't absorb more than one. They really can't. They cannot absorb more than one big idea. So always try to simplify it to one main presentation. So let's just use that as an example. Let's say we were going to speak on prayer. Well, how many different kinds of prayer are there? Somebody name one. There's the Lord's Prayer. What?
Praying in tongues.
Say it louder and bigger. Praying in tongues. That would be one topic. So if you were going to speak on prayer and you brought in the Lord's Prayer and then you brought in praying in tongues, it's just like, that's a lot for your audience. Yeah. And so maybe you're talking about personal prayer, or maybe you're talking about corporate prayer, or maybe you're talking about writing your prayers. So you want, or maybe you're talking about a bigger picture, like prayer is communicating with God. So you have one main topic, and that's your bridge. And then I have a bridge picture that I took in New Hampshire, and you go from New Hampshire to whatever state's next to it. What is it, Vermont maybe? And that's the only way you can go on there. It's the one bridge. But the reason I like this picture, look underneath that bridge. Look at those enormous piers underneath the bridge. So I've got, stay with me, one main point, and I've got piers underneath it that support it. Got it? If I'm going to speak on the Lord's Prayer, then one of my piers might be that it was a model prayer. One of my piers might be that he addressed God in a holy way. And one of my piers might be that he asked for his daily provision. See, I can put those under there. So we work on one main point with supporting thoughts. Those supporting thoughts are your outline. Right? You've heard this, I have to have an outline. And so that's what those supporting thoughts, all of them support the bridge. If you take one of them out, the bridge falls. If you don't have them, you've just got a piece of wood across the water, right? So, you get it? You're smart kids, I know that, so no problem. All right, so now before we go from there, I want to talk to you just a second about outline. Please don't think that I mean what your English teacher taught you in 4th grade. I do not mean Roman numeral 1, little a, big A with a quotation mark or a parenthesis behind it. I don't mean that, because I would go crazy if I had to do that. An outline is just a simple way for you to remember where you're going. It really is. It's just a simple way. So I love outlines. I love to make them, and they're all different kinds. You can have them that rhyme. I have one that I speak on quite a lot, and the 3 points of the outline are attitude, gratitude, and certitude. I'll never forget them because they're so easy, right? And guess what? My audience doesn't forget because I say it enough, and afterwards they'll come and say attitude, gratitude, certitude, because they got it. And I want an outline that I can remember without having to read a long sentence or get all complicated with it. I want just a simple outline. An outline could be trust and obey. It could just be 2 points. And those, you'd never forget. If that was your outline, you'd have trust and obey. And you could put peers under each one of those, supports under each one. So this is how you build your peers. In the simplest way possible, the thing that you can remember when you get on stage. Because on stage is scary. It's a place where you forget everything you ever learned in your whole life. You forget how to speak English. You just forget everything. But if you have a simple outline, you can go there, right? You can do it. All right, so we've got our main thought, we've got our outline, our peers underneath. And then let's talk about how do we present it when we get on the stage. So I'm just going to give you some quick tips on stage presence, okay? So the first one is humor. If you can use humor, it will get your point across. Humor is the way. And here's what I want to tell you. Don't add humor. Uncover humor. Uncover it in your presentation. Uncover it. Let something that's there become witty. I can't teach you to be funny, but I can teach you how to be winsome and witty and pleasant. That's all you really need to do. You should have some moment of humor or wittiness every 5 to 7 minutes in your talk. That often, to just lighten it up a little bit. And it can be just as simple as, stumbling over your words and say, well, that was easy for me to say, or something along those lines. Just to be, have it lighten up for your crowd. People will get the point with humor. It's very important. And, I could teach you about 3 or 4 hours on how to do humor, and maybe sometime I will. All right, the second stage method is body language. That's so important. You must really be careful. Stand in front of your audience, your feet about hip part, hands down, comfortable. Everybody stand up. Let's try it. Let's get a comfortable, neutral position. Just Loosen up, bit comfortable. This should be, no, it shouldn't be that, girls. It should be this. Just a comfortable position. This is neutral. You can sit down. This is neutral. And you go there often. Go to that place often when you're speaking. If you are doing this, guess what happens? People are going. That's all they're thinking about. And if you are fidgety and doing all kinds of crazy things with your body, people will notice that and not hear your message. And what's wonderful about having a neutral position is that it gives you the opportunity to use these wonderful tools that God gave you, your hands and your arms. So if I'm just talking to you and I'm saying, isn't it a wonderful day to be here, and it's so great and all of that, and God in heaven is here, right? You're like, what? But if I'm in neutral and I say, oh, what a great day to be here. What a wonderful day to be here, and I'm just so grateful to the Lord in heaven. Look how powerful that was, because it was a deliberate movement. And be careful about this, because we all want to do that. We are this and this. And I got to tell you, if you ever get the chance to be on screen, up on the big screen in the auditorium, and they record you, please don't say, on Tuesday we are having an event, and on this Tuesday we're going to be there and we want you to all come. That is meaningless. I know that people are trying to be having the emphasis for it, but it's meaningless, isn't it? Do you see it? So get out of that habit. Put those hands down. And then when you say wide and you say deep, it matters. And watch people like your leader here, like Isaac. Watch Pastor Garrett and Pastor Dan. They have a neutral position. And when they make a move, it is for a purpose. You have a question?
Yes. So, does that apply when you're trying to speak to a younger audience? Like, let's say for kids. Does that apply to?
Yes. Of course, you're going to do a little crazier things the younger the crew. If you're in the kids group, you're going to try to do things. But still, all of this is just distracting. It means nothing unless you make it matter. And I think it applies, yes. You'd be more enthusiastic if you had kids. We'd be dancing around and whatever. I would too. But I would make every move with a purpose, with a reason for doing it. Not just because it's a nervous habit of pumping my hands like that, okay? So body language. Let me tell you this. In a big place like our church, the venue, or even here, if you're going to speak to this side of the room, you walk to this side of the room, and you speak to this side of the room, and you finish your thought.
That's good.
Then you go back to neutral. This is good for your audience. Your audience is going to love this because they're, okay, the person knows what they're doing. Then you're going to speak to this side, and you speak to this side of the group, and you finish your thought before you move. The worst thing you can do is be making your point, and I'm just making my point like that. You could just walk right off the stage if you wanted to, I guess. But so finish your thought as you go. But make those moves deliberate, and always come back to neutral. Always. And the good thing about neutral is if you're behind a podium, when you get to neutral, you can look at your notes, see? So it's really, really important. All right, the next one is eye contact. And that is another place where you have to really be intentional. Now, what's your name? Jeremy. I just made contact with you, and I kept talking to you till I finished my thought, didn't I? Right? I don't care how nervous he gets about that. I've had people where I'm looking in the audience and I make eye contact with them, and they're like, oh my goodness, she's looking at me. I'll look down, so they look down, and when they come back, I'm still there. I just have fun with it, right? But here's the reason for that, to make that kind of eye contact. It's because if I connect with you, and you and I make a connection, there is actual research that shows that if I connect with him, everybody else feels that same connection. Yeah. It's like electricity. If I connect with you, everybody's feeling that connection. You stay with them until you finish your thought. Finish your sentence or finish your thought. Stay with them. I don't care how nervous they are. I don't care if they get fidgety. It's more fun that way. I'm just telling you. So make eye contact. I was teaching a group of people who, this organization has 12,000 small groups around the world. And I was teaching the leaders. And I taught them this eye contact thing. Now, they went home. They have a group of 20 or 12 or some number, not too many. And one of the girls called me and said, I can't believe this happened. She said, last night I went back to my group, and while I was speaking, the only thing I could remember that I needed to do, because I was so overwhelmed by all the stuff you taught, was to make eye contact. So she said, in my small group, I made eye contact, and I made eye contact with another one, and I finished my thought, and I kept doing it all night long. I'd make eye contact. She said, when it was over, the people in my audience, my group, said, what did they teach you at that conference? That is the best you've ever done. And she said, I swear the only thing I changed was eye contact. Imagine how powerful. That speaker looked at me. Ooh, that's terrible. But that eye contact is great. All right, so this is just an overview. I'd spend a long time with you if we had time. Now, I want to talk to you about your voice. You have 3 volume levels of your voice. You have the softest, you can speak and still be heard. You have the loudest you can be and not be shouting, and you have an in-between. Yeah. You should use all 3 during every presentation. Don't stay up here all the time because people can't breathe. And don't stay down here all the time because they'll go to sleep on you. So use all 3 at different levels. With your voice, last year I took, every year I go to a coach of some kind because I want to keep learning. And last year my coach was a voice guy. And he taught us there is pitch in your voice. So this means whether you speak with it really high like that or really low like that. And you can control that, and you need to be somewhere that's pleasant. Yeah. You don't need to be up here in your nose talking all the time because people, oh my goodness, that's killing me, right? But if you speak so deep that they begin to get not monotonous. So find that level, practice, and find a level that's good for you. Find a level that's full in your voice. So he taught us pitch, and he taught us power. And power comes from here. You breathe here, and you speak from here so that your voice is full and rich. Even when you're at your lowest voice, you still use your diaphragm to breathe in and breathe out so that there's power there. And he also taught us pace. So pitch, power, and pace. And pace is to basically slow down. Most all of us talk too fast. And it becomes where people can't understand you, even little kids. You gotta say it clearly so that they can understand you. So voice is great fun. Yes, sir?
So in your speaking, you talk about pace. Are you saying that your allotted time segment should all be at the same pace, or is there a good reason for maybe changing pace?
Oh, what a good question. And yes. Yes is the answer, because you do want to change it. If I'm telling you a story about my day and it's a really crazy day and I just want to tell you about what I got up and did and then the next thing I did and that, I'm trying to make the point of how busy I am, I can move that really fast. But if I'm trying to make the point of you need quiet time with the Lord, I need to slow that down. So you get the difference? And so you use whatever you're telling and you use that as your pace so that you're getting people's attention. Yes, sir?
I was taught this, and correct if this is wrong, but how the pitch and the power in your voice will sometimes show the importance or their eagerness for that point. I don't know if that's true or not.
Of course.
I've been taught, but
yes. It's so true. I took this coach for months and months, and that was one of the pieces that we learned too, is that if I have a point that I'm so thrilled about, and I know this is going to be the highlight of my bridge, this is going to be the pinnacle of my talk, then yes, I'm going to change how excited I feel about it. It depends on what it is, of course, you know. Yes, always. Good questions, great questions. Anybody else? All right, so the voice is very important, and you really must work on it, especially if you're just talking through your nose, which we do here in Texas, right? Be careful, get it into your throat, lift that palate in the inside, and let it come out very powerfully. Your audience will think you have authority. They'll say, he must know what he's talking about if you do that. Yes, sir?
Out of those four, which one do you think is the most important and the most important?
Of these four on the list,
Yes, ma'am. I know they're all very important. but
Yeah.
which one do you think is-
the one that annoys me most is body language. When it's, you know, all kinds of. I don't care if it's frantic. I want it to have a purpose. If you're with kids and you're doing something, yes. But if you're speaking to the senior citizens, no. You know? And I have professional speakers that I work with that just can't keep their hands still. They're just talking oh my word, that's terrible. It doesn't have a reason. Yes?
What would you say, how would you go about learning proper body language? So you see, like, it could be not them doing this, but if, say they're talking about going wide and they're going like this. Like, it's not matching what they're saying. How do you teach yourself to match what you're actually saying?
Practice is probably the first thing, how you teach yourself to do it. And listen to other people. Ask somebody, you help me with when I speak today. You help me. Tell me what I did. Also, be intentional. Just say, I'm going to do this. See, I just did that. There was no reason for that, except I wanted you to hear it. But be intentional. Be specific. See the point? But I have had speakers who did this the whole time. Or they played, Olympics with their fingers and that kind of stuff. I mean, oh my word, I can't get my eyes off of it. We had one guy at a course we were teaching, and he was like, every point he went, and God said, and God loved us so much. He had no idea he was doing that. And it was just so annoying. Right, Noah?
How do you, because with the tips, I find that sometimes people sound a little manufactured because they're trying to implement all of these tips and tricks that when they speak, it's just not them.
Sounds like a robot.
It's like a formulated
Yeah.
formula of. So how
So-
do you go about remaining authentic while still implementing these?
Yeah.
Implementing these.
Well, it's a really important question, isn't it? It's so important. You got to do a lot of prayer, a lot of praying. Lord, don't let me look like a robot up there, really. And you also, I think the longer you speak, the more comfortable you get. The more comfortable you'll get. And, maybe some breathing exercises. Okay. But if you're well prepared, that's the other thing. If you're well prepared, then you can speak without being touched to it. George's a great coach, too.
One of the things you might do is to video yourself. Yeah. Get up and make a 3-minute presentation, videotaping yourself. The one that she was talking about, the guy that slapped his legs every time he was doing something. We happened to be, that was one of the sessions we were doing. We were videoing it, and then we actually took a little video card and gave it to them to go back and watch. And then they gave the same presentation the next day, and it was amazing how much better they were. But for that guy, we told him he'd get that just every time he turned around, he was doing that. He said, I had no idea.
It was interesting. He runs an international youth organization for young people, Christian young people. And his main job is fundraising. And he raises millions and millions of dollars. And so we asked him, how do you get people to give you money when you're doing that all the time? And he said, I just sit across the table from them. So we pulled the table out and sat him down, and he sat down at that table and gave the most fabulous presentation. But that standing up was just something he, at the moment, couldn't get rid of. I hope he has by now. Any other questions? Great question. Yes.
Yes, so when you're using different equipment, like let's say using a handheld, or using a lapel another time, how can you switch your body language between those two?
Well, it's pretty easy when you have a lapel because then you're free. With the handheld, tip, put it here. Don't put it here. Musicians put it up here because they're projecting that melody over the music. But you put it here and you use that diaphragm to present a voice that works. That's really important. But here's the problem. If you have that, I have seen so many professional speakers who then think this hand has to be moving. And it just becomes the strangest thing you've ever seen. It's just pump, 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 whatever. Don't do it. Again, keep it in neutral and use it as best you can because you only have the one hand. So, but do pull it down here where you've got some space because they want to see your face too. And you had a question? No? Oh, no, sorry. Okay, anybody else? All right, so those are 4 stage presence tools. And that is really important for you to use those tools the best you can. I love the questions. Thank you for being so into the talk. It's really, really important. And I want you to start watching in Sunday on the stage, the pastors who speak. They are excellent at this. They really are such an example to you at how to do it, okay? And you begin to notice. And then maybe you go somewhere else sometime and you'll see somebody, you know, that runs across the stage from over there and to over there, and you'll go, aha, I know why that doesn't work now because all I can think about is he going to trip as he runs from one side to the other? I've actually seen that happen. So anyway, stage presence is so amazing. Now, the next on your list there, on your handout, is openings. And I want to talk to you about openings a minute. It is so important that that first line you speak grabs the audience. What I want for them to do is to get up on the edge of their seat and lean toward you and hear what you have to say. What I don't want them to do is to settle back in their chair and fold their arms and say, oh, brother, I'm going to be bored. You don't want that. You want that enthusiasm. And the way you capture it is your first line. So there are a lot of different ways. I put them on your handout, different ways you can do it. You can start with statistics. But if you do, don't give the math, because somebody will do the math. You gotta, don't say out of 3,412 people, 225 of them did this. Somebody will be back there doing the math. Not me, by the way, but somebody else. And you don't want to do that. What you want to say is, look at the row, look at the 3 people on the row next to you. One of you won't be back here next year. One of you will have a car accident. One of you will have a hurt in your life. See? That way it becomes more real to them. And so find a way to do that. And if you can add humor to the statistics, that's really good. The one statistic that's so great is that half the people in the world are afraid. Their biggest fear is public speaking. And Jerry Seinfeld said, that means that at a funeral, the person giving the obituary would rather be in the coffin. And it's just, if there's something funny you can think of to do with a statistic, that's really great. We had a pastor here, an older guy, speaking here at Grace one time, and he gave some statistics about people not getting married in this generation. And he said, this many percentage is not getting married and this many percentage are living together. He said, well, back in my day, we called it shacking up. So he found a way to add his humor to it. Of course, so just find ways to do that. But statistics are a great way to do it. The second one is a shocking statement. One time, Pastor Garrett got on stage, stood on stage kind of like that and looked at us and said, what in the world is wrong with you? I mean, we were shocked, and we were leaning on our chair thinking, what is he going to teach us today? And it turns out that Andrea had said that to him sometime during the week. And so he used that as as his opening statement. A shocking statement is a wonderful way. I have a presentation that's about our Great Pyrenees, and my opening statement, and a coach got me to do this, but I say, Isabel is a wuss. And then I talk all about Isabel as if she's a person. And about 5 minutes into the presentation, we show a picture of her, and she's a dog. And people are so surprised. But I use something that happened with her as my outline of what I'm going to teach them. And my ending line is, don't be a wuss like Isabel. See? So I tie it together. But that's my opening line. That's a shocking statement. The second one is to ask a question, which I did with you today. I said, do you have anything to say? That's an opening line. You can tell a story. We're going to talk about story a little bit. But a story is a great way to get that attention, get them on the edge of their seats thinking, I'm going to listen because this person is going to teach me something. And you can use a quotation from a famous person. I did that a little bit into my talk today with Gerald Ford. Or you can use drama. Let's pretend that you are an audience of parents at the local junior high. And you came to this meeting because there's trouble at the junior high. And so you're an interested group, and what if I said, I got up on stage and said, well, I just came here today, I want to talk to you about what's going on in the school, and we've been finding drugs and alcohol and even guns and stuff in our school. And you all would be interested because you're parents and you're interested in the school. But what if I got up and I said, guns, notice the pause, alcohol, tobacco, drugs. These were all found in the lockers of our school yesterday. See what the drama of that changed how you felt, didn't it? So you're open. All right, lockers, backpacks, lockers.
Sour Patch?
So that's how important an opening is. A dramatic opening. If you have that flair, it's really good. All right, I'm not going to suggest at all that you ever memorize your talk. I'm going to suggest that you learn your talk and that you know it, that you're well prepared, but I'm not going to suggest that you memorize it. But I am going to suggest that you memorize your opening line, that you know that line. Because let me tell you something. You get on a stage and the light hits you and you can't see the audience because it's dark out there, and you think, what am I doing here? You think, what is my name? I don't remember who I am. And I mean, it's horrifying. And as much as I've spoken to tens of thousands of people across the globe, I have that moment every time I get on stage. Every time I have that moment, like, what am I going to say? But I know that first line. And then I say it, and then the fear fades away. Right? So it's good. Memorize your first line and your opening. So these are the types of openings. Please don't get up and go, well, I'm so glad to be here. It's just, isn't it hot outside? It's like, they're all like, no, we didn't notice. It was hot. Aren't the decorations lovely? You know, you have 30 seconds, maybe 20. Right. Don't waste them with that. You can thank the people that invited you. You can say something about the weather. You can do anything you want later, but don't use those first seconds for it. Get their attention. Put them on the edge of their seat so they say, I'm going to listen. It's so important. All right, we have the opening, and we've talked a little bit about how to do the interior. I want to give you my biggest hint of all, my favorite hint of all, about the body of your presentation. And it's 3 words. It's called Story It Up. This came to me from a person that lives in California. She's a literary agent, and she said, this is the advice, and I've always thought it was the best advice I've ever heard, and that is story it up. You must tell stories. You must prove your points, your peers, with stories. It's biblical. 2 Samuel chapter 12. David has done a terrible thing. He's married Bathsheba, he's had her husband killed, and the baby has died, and he's in mourning. And nobody will dare talk to him. He's all alone until God sent Nathan the prophet. And Nathan didn't come and say, David, you have sinned. He didn't do that. He told David a story. Anybody remember? Story of a little lamb, of a man that had many lambs, but he had a guest come in. And so he took the one lamb from his poor neighbor and slaughtered it and served it to his guests. And David was outraged. How terrible, we'll go and punish him, put him in jail. And Nathan said, you're the one. You're the man who did that. God used a story to bring the king to his knees. And then David realized, oh yeah, that's me. That's exactly what I am. He probably wouldn't have taken Nathan pointing his finger, would he? But he heard the story. That's how powerful story is. Oh, I wish I could spend hours with you about story and how important it is and how to make a story. Let me give you 2 or 3 little quick points. Number 1, please never tell a joke. Never, ever, 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 ever tell a joke. Let me tell you why. Number 1, you are no good at it. That's just the truth. The people who tell jokes train for years and years and years to become comedians who can tell jokes. They learn the pauses and the inflections and everything, and you haven't had that and you don't need to. But the second reason may be more important, and that's that half your audience has heard the joke. Half of them's already heard it, and they are going to say, oh, I've heard that. Maybe they might even yell out the punchline before you finish. That's terrible. And just while I'm here, let me say, please don't ever tell a joke and put some real people in it. Like, my grandma and grandpa did this, and it's really a joke. It's not true. Because you know what I'm thinking in the audience? I'm thinking, that's a joke, and you just lied to me because you told me your grandma and grandpa did it. So just forget about jokes. Story is not jokes. Story is what has happened to you that proves the point. It can be what has happened to somebody else too, but it's what happened to you. So story is what moves us. All right, let me give you a couple of these are basics about how to build a story. And it's on the back of your handout. This right here is called the story arc. And it starts with a normal, and it then has a conflict, and then there's a new normal. This is the story arc. Every good story you ever heard, every novel you ever read, every story that you loved has this structure, because that is the way we have to have conflict for a story to be good, and we have to resolve it, or we can't survive if we don't have it resolved. So let's think of a movie. Anybody want to name one? Name one I've seen, yes. Okay, we're going to do that one in a minute, so let's do a different one. You saw it on the handout.
Dylan thought
Yeah.
the answer's Jesus.
The answer's Jesus. Squirrel, whatever. Anybody know one? Just what?
Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Oh, there's a good one. Let me think about it. Ferris Bueller's Day Off. You've never heard of it. All right, let's get one that everybody's.
Everyone seen that?
The Greatest Showman.
How about Toy Story?
What is that
Everyone's
movie,
seen Cars.
bro?
Alright, cars.
All right, Cars. Sure, we'll do that one. We'll do that one. Okay. It starts out with a little town. Cars are the people, right? And what's happening in the little town?
They get no business.
No business is happening. That's normal. Normal does not mean good.
Sure.
Normal means normal. So it's not good. Why is it bad? Because the freeway passed them by, right? Right? Okay. All right, so now, what interrupts it? What's the conflict that interrupts it? Lightning McQueen shows up. He didn't mean to. He certainly didn't intend to. But he did show up, and he revitalized the town and made it famous again. All right, and then what happens at the end?
He changed his character and let someone else win.
He does. He becomes a better person for it. All right, you see it? The normal, the conflict or the interruption, and the new normal. Let me give you a Bible story. There was Jesus went across, in Mark chapter 4, Jesus went across the Sea of Galilee, and he landed in a place called the Gadarenes. Anybody know where I'm talking about? And he found a man, and the man was in the cemetery. Does anybody remember what had happened to this guy? Anybody? Anybody know the story? You'll have to read it, Mark chapter 4. The man was crazy, and he was hurting himself and others, so they had chained him up. He was also naked, and he was also just miserable, and they had chained him up to a tombstone. And so this is his normal. He's in a mess. Remember, normal's not good, necessarily. It's just what it is. And his conflict, which is that Jesus showed up. So conflict's not always bad, it's just interruption. And so Jesus showed up, and then the new normal, I love the last verses of Mark chapter 4, it says, he was sitting, he was fully clothed, and in his right mind. See what happened? So you've all kind of caught on to something, that when you see this storyline, there's an arc that goes to it, and the characters in the story change in some way. Yeah. The main character always changes, either for the good or the bad, but he does. So every story has to have this structure. So when you're telling the story of whatever in your life, and you're using it as an illustration, you have to be sure that you have told it right. The thing you don't want to do is tell new normal first. You don't want to tell that, and then you got to backflash or flashback to what happened. You want to start with normal and then give that. And we could do that with just about every movie. But let's move on to the second illustration there. And I want to show you Pixar's story structure. And this is so much fun. This is every Disney movie you've ever seen. Every one of them has this exact structure. So the first piece of it, George, we need it on the screen. So the first of it is once upon a time there was, let's use Nemo. And so once upon a time there was a little fish named Nemo. And every day, what happened to Nemo? No, his normal. Can't go there yet. What was his normal? Every day. He went to school. Yeah, he went to school, and his daddy said something to him. Don't you ever go out into the ocean. Every day, we see it. Every day, his overprotective father says, don't you drive the car, don't you go. All right, then one day, what happened? He went into the ocean, right? Exactly. And now because of that, what happened to Nemo?
They got captured.
He ended up in an aquarium in a dentist's office in where? Sydney? In Australia. Now, because of that, what happened? What did his father do? He gathered a posse, right? And they went after him. Until finally, he was found and brought back home. So that is picked. Now, you put any Disney movie you want to in your head, and you'll see that it's once upon a time there was, that's normal. And every day, that's normal. And then one day, that's the beginning of conflict. And because of that, and then because of that, until finally. So when you are working on a story to tell, to use as an illustration, you must put it in one of these structures. They are similar. This is the same thing. Normal, conflict, new normal. But it's more fun because it's Disney, right? So you want to use that structure. All right, I just want to give you that because I want to whet your appetite. Because we could spend, forever learning how to tell stories and learning what's the keys to it. But you must, as you make your presentations, as you build each pier under your bridge, you must include some story to illustrate, to prove, to enhance. your point. It's what drives it, it's the energy, it's the power, it's what makes the audience go, oh. Now, look, you've seen it happen. Our pastors will be preaching, and they'll be teaching a message and preaching it, and then they'll say, you know, one time, right? One time my family and I did this, and they'll illustrate it, and it'll be exactly what you needed to hear, right? Works every time. Any questions about story? Oh, I wish we had weeks and weeks and weeks. Now, I put this up here on a slide by itself because this is something I want you to do. This is your action step. I want you to start a storyteller's list. Now, my list has hundreds of stories on it. And that list is, sometimes the story just has one word. Because I know the story, it's my story, it happened to me. I know it. But I have them listed, I have hundreds on my list, and I add a story every day. I added one yesterday. I add a story every time I see something. Be alert to life. Watch other people, watch what's happening. Think how you feel, think what situation you saw, and then put it down. You don't know when you're going to use it. I have stories on my list which I've never used yet. But if I'm writing and I write a chapter and I think, I need a story here, I flip over to that list and I start going down and I go, this story will make that point. Did you hear that? The story has to make the point. But you start it. I have mine on Evernote. You could use Apple Notes. You could use any app. I like one that goes across all my devices so I can pull it up and see it at any time. But it's so important that you start it, and start it now. I wish I'd have started it when I was your age because so many things have happened I've just forgotten. But I'm watching all the time to tell those stories, to have them in my arsenal so that I know. Okay, everybody promise, I promise, out loud, I promise to start my storyteller's list today. Right. Start doing it, seriously. When somebody says something funny or interesting or important, or you see a child, or you're on the freeway and you see something, or you're in a stadium and you see somebody. We were in a football stadium and the man sitting on the row down beside us did not like the team and he did not like the coach. He was disgusted with them and frustrated with them, and he would say, every time they'd play a play, he'd say, whatever. And then the coach would say, whatever. I thought it was the funniest thing I ever saw. Now, I have no idea where I'm going to use that other than right here. But isn't that great? Sometime that's going to show up in one of my talks. But, I mean, what a hoot for this guy to say, whatever. Did you start your list?
Yeah.
Oh, let's talk to this. Okay, let's see. So you have a list, and what do you have it on?
It's about a kid attacking me in service.
Oh, okay. But what app is it?
Oh, this is Apple Notes.
Okay, he's got his on Apple Notes, and so he's
So you
going
can make
here,
folders.
and then he has his storyteller's list, and he's got, what have you got, 4 words there? 3 words.
Yep, pretty good.
He has the child's name and says attacking me. Now, he knows that story, and some point, and somebody else knows the story, but at some point you're going to be ready to speak, and you're going to say, I need an illustration that's like when I was shocked. And you go, oh, out of that one. Yeah. So Grayson spoke to us, a group that I was in last Thursday, and he told the story of his grandfather carries Jolly Rogers in his pocket. And Grayson loves Jolly Rogers. He especially loves the red ones, the strawberry, the cherry, all of that. And so one day he hits his grandpa up for a Jolly Roger. He pulls it out and gives it to Grayson. He pops it in his mouth and discovers that it's like spice, cinnamon and cloves and all that. And Grayson's like, nah, I didn't want to take that. I don't like that. I was expecting watermelon or strawberry. So he was able to use that story to make his point. And so you keep your list. I don't care how trivial the story sounds. Do it. Start making the list. Okay, let's move on. Now let's talk about closings, and I'm getting to the place where I have to do that. Here's a list of ways you can close. You could take a summary of your outline and explain it to them. You could, repeat it to them several times. You can do a poem. I wouldn't suggest using a really long one, but if you find a poem that really works and does, you can do it with a quote, or you can do it with a story. And a story is a great way to end. Here's a little tip. Sometimes we think we want to pray at the end. Like, I want to pray. I feel that's the right way to end my presentation, and that's great. But what happens when you pray and you say amen, then the audience doesn't know what to do. They want to clap, but they feel weird clapping after a prayer. And maybe the event planner or the MC is like, are they done? Is he done? Is that the end? And he doesn't know when to come on stage. So here's a little tip for you. Say this. Say, I would like to pray over you about this topic we've been talking about today. I'd love to pray over you. And then I have one more thing to say. You say the prayer, and then you say your last line. Nice. And then everybody is okay. You've been able to pray, but they're okay with clapping because it feels different and that. All right, now remember I told you not to memorize your presentation because that will become known rote. That will become that kind of, if you memorize it, learn it, don't memorize it. Just know what you're going to do. Memorize your outline, that's all you have to do. And if you also memorize that last line, memorize your opening line, memorize your last line. Because listen, stuff happens when you're talking. I mean, the lights go out, the smoke alarms go off. Once a bat started flying in an audience, I mean, stuff is going to happen. And you could get off track and not be able to think, I don't know where to go, I don't know how I'm going to finish. But if you have that last line memorized, then you can head there and go there. Yeah, so it's so great to memorize that. Now, so openings and closings are really good. When George and I were first married, we went to a church, a big church, and the pastor was a famous man. I won't tell you his name, but he was famous, and he was a really dynamic preacher. And we moved on and he retired. And then I heard that he was going to speak at the church we were going to. And I was so excited to hear him again because we loved him so much and cared about him. So we got there early and we got in the audience and we sat down and I looked up on the stage and there he was, and he was really old. I mean, he looked like he could hardly walk, just sort of tottering, and I thought, oh, I bet he's not as dynamic as he used to be. I bet it's not, I'm sorry, I wish I hadn't come, And so when it was time for him to speak, he came up to stage and he did sort of wobble up there, and he got to the stage and he preached his sermon, and I needn't have worried because he was still just as powerful as he'd been all the time. When he spoke about America and how we need to pray for America. And he said this, he said, now I want you to to pray with me for America. That was his ending. And I thought to myself, I'm the coach, you teach this stuff, Karen. Good ending, Pastor. Way to go. I like that. Let's just pray for America. But then he said, but before we pray, I want to tell you a story. And he said, when he was a young man, very young man, he was a musician for a famous evangelist. And they traveled around the world doing revivals and crusades and tent revivals and all this kind of thing. And he was the musician, and he said, I loved being the musician so much. I loved it. I loved, leading the people in worship, and I was good at it, and I loved it. He said, but in my heart, I knew that God was calling me to preach. And I fought it because I'm like, no, God, I'm the musician. But he knew God was doing it. So they went to Ireland, and they were in Ireland, and they had a big crusade. And finally, he went to this famous evangelist, and he said, God's calling me to preach. And the evangelist surprised him because the evangelist said, if you are going to leave me now. They said the next morning the team got up, packed their bags, and went to Russia and left him in Ireland. And there he was, just a young man in Ireland with no money, hardly had enough to get himself home. And he was in a dingy hotel room, and he was like, what am I going to do now? What have I done? And he was so distressed about what to do. Finally, the phone rang. He picked it up, and he said, and the voice on the other end said, Laddie, I heard you want to preach. He said, well, yes, sir, I believe God's calling me to preach. He said, well, I'll tell you what, why don't you come down to our church and we'll hold a revival. You can start tomorrow. We'll hold a revival and you can you can preach. You can practice preaching. And he said, then the pastor said, but I got to warn you about something. Our people don't like revivals. They don't like to come out at night. They're not going to come. They've never come to a revival, but you'll get practice and a few people will show up, but the majority won't show up. And he said, I said to the pastor, well, do you have anybody who will pray? The pastor said, yeah, I have some people. He said, ask them to meet me at the church this afternoon at 4:00. He went to the church and there was a group there and they prayed all night long. And they prayed the next morning until just time for the service to start. And he went back to his hotel room and showered and changed his clothes and went back to the church. And it was standing room only. And it was standing room only for 3 weeks. He preached this revival. And then the old preacher leaned across the podium and looked at us in the audience. And he said, folks, I've seen a lot of things in my life, but I've never forgotten the power of prayer. Now, will you pray with me for America? And we did. We filed out and got down to the front and got on our knees and prayed. What an ending, huh? So much better than just saying, will you pray? But he told us that story and showed us the power of prayer. And that's the ending you want. That's where you want the ending. It was about the audience. It was about the message. It was about God's power and what he can do. And so that's what it's all about. I hope you have seen today the breadth and the width and the depth of what speaking is all about and what you need to learn. And you can learn it. There is no doubt. Read books, watch speakers, take notes and say, that worked or that didn't work. And then you will become the speaker that God intends for you to be. Thanks so much for listening today.